Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. I guess it's still good morning, everybody. Thanks for the invitation. What I'd like to do today in our time, as I'm talking, if you have a question, like Ann said, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we'll take the questions, in my experience, when they come up, because that's when it's important. And if we wait to a pause, you may have forgotten the question or it's no longer important. So I'd like to take the questions as we go.
Thanks, Bob. I'll interrupt you with questions then.
Okay, good, thanks. What I want to do is I want to give a kind of a quick update on what I call HR speak. I was in a meeting with 6 HR executives from across the country this morning, and actually this topic came up. Then I want to talk about the leading interview question that you're going to get in every interview. And then I want to talk about behavioral interviews and storytelling and how to anticipate the question. And the last thing I want to talk about is the use of skills. In human resources today, there's a huge movement to behavioral interviewing and skill-based hiring. So it's very important that you understand and be able to articulate your accomplishments and your skills relative to the skills that people are looking for. So the learning objectives are going to be the HR speak, anticipating questions. I'm giving you homework. Obviously, there's no way to test whether you do it or not. But I want you to walk away from here today knowing how to anticipate a question and how to anticipate the answer you want to give using your skills. Ann and I spoke about this a couple of days ago. The interview question you're going to get is tell me about yourself. It's the number one question. And if you can answer that really very well, then you can have a lot of control in the interview. I want to talk about the STAR method, situation, actions, and results. And then I want to conclude with the top 10 skills. And I'm going to do all that as we go. Okay, HR speak. When we talk about HR speak, what is happening in the HR field today is we're trying to, and there's no guideline on the SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management hasn't issued, a template or guidelines. But what we're going through in HR is we're trying to put under major categories everything that would be in that category. So compliance is a huge area in HR, and that's being being legal in everything we do, federal laws, local laws, state laws, what have you. And that includes a EEO, affirmative action, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the National Labor Relations Act, Occupational Safety and Health Act, Fair Labor Standards Act. That's almost the entire alphabet, quite frankly, just to name a few. And you will hear compliance a lot. Talent management includes training and developing, benchmarking, career management, career development, competencies, cross-training, new hire orientation. A really important one is gap analysis, what you have versus what you want, employee and labor relations, just to name a few. Total rewards, and when you hear that, that's talking about direct compensation, how much you get paid, different approaches to attraction, retention, and motivation, and health and retirement plans. A very expensive area. Wage cost is about a third in a non-union environment, about a third of your payroll. Talent acquisition. This is the idea of staffing, interviewing, formation of job interviews, sourcing an interview, and costing. How much does it cost us to hire somebody from a different source, just to name a few. Now, before we move, is any questions on HR speak? Okay. Tell me about yourself. So if I were to tell somebody, if I were to ask somebody, tell me about yourself, I'm going to, I see Jody's on the screen underneath me. Jody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about yourself.
So my name is Jody Rash, and I am the director of employment programs at JCA, which entails helping our 50+ job seekers get back to work.
Okay. How do you think she did? Someone put their answer in the chat. 10, she did excellent. 5, okay, and 1, oh my God. Any votes?
Here we go.
Remember who's monitoring the expo.
I know. When I disappear, you know why, folks. Okay. That's a hard question. It really is. But nearly every interview starts with it. And it's an idea of trying to build, it's the interviewer trying to build rapport. So your answer must be excellent. And it should be 2 minutes max. But you are in charge. They are going to say, tell me about yourself. Then you get to say whatever you want to say. And what it is, it's a great opportunity for you to take charge. And you must talk about what you want the interviewer to remember about you. And that's, we're going to talk about that in the storytelling section, when I call sticky memories. How do I create a sticky memory? And if I can create a sticky memory, as that hiring manager, the interviewer, the recruiter, whoever, as they go through that, they're going to say, oh yeah, I remember her. She's the one who. And at the end of your 2 minutes, a good idea is to say to the person who's interviewing you, anything else you'd like to know? And now you're in charge of the interview because you've answered what they wanted, you've created sticky memories, and now you've given the interviewer, you've turned it back over to them, and you're now saying, anything else you'd like to know? And that you have to ask that question with a lot of confidence, because you don't know necessarily what they're going to say. But you're probably going to get the answer, no, thank you very much. And now you're going to shift the interview power back to the recruiter, because you've given them that, you've said anything else you want to know. They're going to say, thank you very much. And now they're going to give it back. You're going to give it back to them, and they're going to ask you. So how do we, now
Bob, can I ask you a question about that? Because there's, in the career gateway, you don't want to drone on about, I mean, do you think 2 minutes and a tell me about yourself is a little lengthy? Because we want them to, get to the point. We don't want the glaze over of the eyes of your interviewer. So would this be more of a, like, is it like, are you thinking like a 30-second elevator pitch, or are you thinking, a lengthier and the tell me about yourself?
Jody, that's a really good question. And my answer to that, quite frankly, is if there's only one way to do it, there'd only be one book written on it. So when I say 2 minutes, it's because what you're trying to create, in my mind, a sticky moment, something that they will remember you by. Now, as you practice this at home, and you rehearse it and you time yourself, if it's 1 minute, that's fine. Now, I agree with you. You don't want to drone on. So I think if you go over 2 minutes, the interviewer is just glazed over, and it's like, when is this interview over? No, so I agree. That's a good question. Okay, storytelling. This is what how well you can tell a story about yourself will create a sticky moment. So, and I know the previous speaker talked about using the PAR, the problem, action, and results. That's perfect. I expanded a little bit to the STAR. What's the situation? What task did you do? Now, in the behavioral interview, you want to be able to talk about the task, because the behavioral interviewer is going to have the job description in front of them, and it might say ability to reconcile the chart of accounts to the general ledger. So you're interviewing for an accountant position. So if that's in the job description, you want to be able to say, I have, because they're going to say, tell me about a situation when you reconcile the general ledger. And you want to be able to say, the task in reconciling the general ledger is, because you've anticipated the question from the job description. So I like situation. What is the situation? The task. What did you do? What were your actions? And what were the results? You always want to finish with results, and you always want the results to be as positive as you can make them. You don't want to embellish it, and you don't want to lie, but you want to make it so it's believable, but it's positive. So the situation, describe your work setting as it relates to the question. Explain what your task was in that situation. In that particular, they're going to say, tell me about a situation that, and you're going to say, in a situation like that, this is what I did. And you want to give your actions, detail what you did, and then summarize, the positive. So so when you create a sticky message, you want to start with a single compelling statement. And you want to figure out what your message is. What do you want to stick? And once you have your message, then you figure out how you want to present your message. Is it an example? Is it a comparison? But what you want to do is you want to mind your own experience. Use your memories. What did you do? Show your vulnerability and how you grew in the situation. People like to see your growth. Hiring managers are looking for people who have learned from their experiences and grown from it. This goes back to Jody's point when you're droning on. Don't make yourself the hero. You can be the central figure in the story, and you should be, but you want to focus on the people around you and what you learned. And you want to make your audience, the people around you, and what you learned, that's your hero statement. You can be the central figure, but you can't make yourself the hero. Why do I say that? I say that because it would show too much ego, too much conceit. And that will turn the interviewer off. Highlight your struggles. We all struggle. This was a hard thing to do. I had to do this. This was hard. It's okay, because a story with no challenge is not very fun to tell, and certainly no challenge is not very fun to listen to. And it's okay it's okay to say it was difficult. The way ahead was difficult. Please.
And
Yes.
if you find time in your presentation to share your own elevator pitch, people are asking about that as well.
Sure. You want me to do that now?
If you're up for it.
Sure. Hi, my name is Bob Roop. I'm a graduate professor of Webster University, and I also sit on their panel of experts. In my human resource career, I've really established a track record as Chief Labor Negotiation Officer. I just made a major presentation at the SHRM State Convention, and I was asked to go to Detroit right now, last week, to go to Detroit to handle labor negotiations with an auto manufacturer and do a union avoidance campaign against the Teamsters. And I was really on my way to the airport when I decided I did not want to accept this assignment, because there was some personal risk to it, because there on the picket line, people are starting to get pretty aggressive and shove back and forth. And I just didn't want to be out there and have that happen to me. But anything else you'd like to know, Anne?
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Jody, they did to me what I did to you.
They said
Okay.
it was very compelling.
Payback.
Keep it simple. And when I just said, I was going to do a union avoidance campaign against the Teamsters, that's a little detail intensive, but probably the people that would ask me, tell me about yourself, they would probably know that, what a union avoidance campaign against the Teamsters and what that looks like and what the risk would be. Keep it, and any other questions in there, Ann?
No, that's it. Somebody has suggested that they write out their elevator pitch before they get online when they're doing virtual interviews, which is a good idea. But you probably want to know it by heart, right?
Yeah, it's all about practice and confidence. And the more you practice, and that could either be talking to a friend, a spouse, it could be interviewing in front of a mirror. When I used to testify as an expert witness, I used to rehearse my testimony in front of the mirror so I could see my body language. And sometimes I even recorded it so I could hear what I was saying. And was I stuttering, and was I giving you this and ooh and all that kind of stuff? So it's all practice. It's really all practice. Okay, now we talked a little bit about the job description, and it's important on behavioral interviews. The premise of a behavioral interview is really very simple and it's very compelling.
Before you go on,
I'm sorry?
Before you go on, one last question. What's the resolution of your story? The elevator pitch is what somebody has asked.
I'm sorry, what was that, Ann?
So what's the resolution of your story, the elevator pitch?
Of my personal one?
Yeah.
My personal one would be, if I took that to the logical conclusion, I would say I've negotiated a union avoidance campaign against 8 major national unions in the United States of America and have never lost.
Wow. That's a good resolution. Okay.
And one thing that I did that I will never do again, I was in front of a group of employees and I was talking about the Teamsters, and I said, I'm not afraid of the Teamsters. They don't scare me and they shouldn't scare you. I'm afraid of 2 things, snakes and dentists. And the next morning when I got in my Hertz car to go to the airport, I was driving down the Beltway and I looked down and there's a snake crawling out from under the front seat of the car. So yes, I've been victorious, but it's been close.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank
And
you.
that's a sticky memory. I've told people that story and they'll say, you're the snake guy. So, but the premise of a behavioral interview is really very simple, but very powerful. And it simply says the following, that your past performance is the best indicator of your future performance. So what you've done in the past is the best indicator of what you're going to do in the future. It's also in an interview where the applicant gives specific examples of what they have performed, certain tasks, or handled a problem. So now this is really very cool. So you're going to get your job descriptions, okay, that you're applying for. And it's going to say ability to reconcile the chart of accounts to the general ledger. So that would be an accounting type of question. So the question is going to come from the job description. And the question is probably going to be, tell me about a time that, or how did you do the, and they're going to ask a specific question from the job description. So that's really very powerful information because hiring managers today, there's a big push to be trained in behavioral interviewing. And to be trained in behavioral interviewing is not all that difficult because your questions to the applicant are going to come from the job description. Now, what I've done here, and I believe Ann says this, my presentation will be posted in the next several days on the website. And so what you have here is about 40 generalized behavioral interview questions, and if depending on what you're doing, you may get the question of, tell me about a time you provided excellent customer service. Tell me about how you communicated an unpopular decision. And these, like I said, this is a list of about 40. And tell me about a time, number 16, tell me about a time you failed. Now, that's a hard question. Tell me about a time you failed. So if you get asked that question, you have to have an answer because we've all failed. So, but you want to make your failure two things: small, and you want to say, and what I learned from that was. So you have to have an answer. Tell me about a time that you failed. Okay, I failed when I missed a deadline. And what I learned from that was better time management skills. So, tell me about a time. I'm just reading this off. Tell me about a time you had to lead a team. Now, if you've never led a team, if you've never done what they're asking, okay, on the job description, you have to say that I have not done. I wouldn't make it that blatant, but if there's something on the job description you haven't done, then you have to be able to respond to that. And you may want to say, I've never done it like that, but I've done something very similar in that. But if you look at the job description and there's things you haven't done, maybe you shouldn't apply for the job, number one, but then you have to be able to come up with similar responses. Okay. Any questions on behavioral interviewing?
Not seeing one yet, which is really surprising because normally this group has some really good questions. So if you have any questions for Bob, please put them in the chat and attention meeting group chat, and I'll ask Bob the questions. Thank you, Bob.
Wow. Normally I'm bombed with questions.
I know, that's why I said I'm surprised today because we have almost 200 people on the expo right now. We do have a question. Any insight on the application of AI in applicant selection and how job seekers should address that?
Artificial intelligence and human resources is at Webster University, where I'm a full professor. They are just now forming an AI task committee within applicant tracking systems. The stereotypical applicant tracking system really searches on key words. So if you're applying for a job, let's just go back to the accountant example. If you're applying for a job as an accountant, you should look at the job description and get keywords from the job description into your resume. And so you may have to customize your resume for every position off the job description. And how they sort the applicant tracking system is a relational database, and how they sort is they go in and look for the keywords. Now, Amazon's artificial intelligence applicant tracking system can go, all the jobs in Amazon are loaded into one database, and every resume that comes in, the AI can tell the recruiter, number one, if this person is qualified for the job they're applying for, and what jobs nationally could they be qualified for. So the artificial intelligence is really a keyword search. And what happens if you put your job, if you post your resume in LinkedIn, when your resume goes into LinkedIn, LinkedIn searches for keywords that the company put in their job description, and LinkedIn will send a minimum of 3 resumes that have the keyword, have more keywords than that you applied for. And so when you put your resume in LinkedIn, it's really important that you put the keywords in, because LinkedIn is searching for it right away.
Great. And what if you're stumped? How do you stall for time to salvage and answer a question to a behavioral question?
Say that again. I didn't hear it. Say that again, please. I'm sorry.
Sure. What if you are stumped? How do you stall for time to salvage an answer to a behavioral question?
If I think what the participant is asking, they've been asked a question and they don't have a good answer right off the top.
Mhm.
And they're trying to figure out how to, for lack of a better phrase, buy time. There's nothing wrong. In fact, it shows really good listening skills. There's nothing wrong by saying, I'm sorry, I didn't really understand what you were asking. Could you repeat that, please? And that will give you, the applicant, a second chance of what they are asking. And remember, you should know if you've looked at the job description and you know maybe where these areas where you haven't done everything, those would be the areas that would be when you say, oh, thank you, I understand. In a similar vein, I did the following.
Oh, that's good.
And so what you are showing is you never said I didn't do that, but what you're saying in a similar vein, this is what I did.
Okay. And what do you do if you get tripped up by somebody was in two different Fed interviews and they asked him about my experience with data and that tripped him up? What do you do if they ask you something that's like totally tripping you up? You ask for clarification?
Sure, the same thing. And thank you. I'm not sure I really understood your question. Would you please ask that again? And smile. Give them. Don't give them, body language that says, "Oh my God," what do I do? Tilt your head and smile and say, "Would you mind, Ann, please asking that again?"
That's
And
good.
here's what you're trying to create warmth. You're trying to create rapport, and you're probing because when they explain it the second time, maybe you'll understand it better, or they'll change really what they're asking for.
Right. Or maybe they weren't sure in the first place themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is, you mentioned that there is a big push in behavioral interviewing. Is there a reason why there is a primary focus in this area among the HR sector?
Yeah, because your past performance is the best indicator of your future performance. And that works really well in a behavioral interview from the applicant side, because if you have the job description, you'll know the task that they're going to be asking about.
Okay. And
And
then I have heard that people should apply even if they don't have all the qualifications or experience. Bob, what are your thoughts on that?
the the frustrating thing is when you just, let's talk about LinkedIn for a second. You may see a job posted on LinkedIn and you see, 400 applications. Okay. And a lot of people just say, I don't even want to get into that. So if you're going to tailor your resume to the position using keywords and the job description, I would go ahead and apply, even though you may not have everything. But I just wouldn't send, your general boilerplate resume. The general boilerplate resume never makes it through applicant tracking. Never, frankly, candidly, it's sad. Um, it never makes it to the hiring manager. And a couple of years ago, I was asked to give a presentation on how to avoid human resource recruiters. And
Yes.
and because we have a lousy reputation. Oh, they ghosted me, or they don't know it was a lousy interview. They don't know what they're looking for. And really what you want to try to figure out is who is, let's go back to accounting. Who's the accounting manager? And write to and email the accounting manager. And there's a website that you can go to get the links for the company. So if it would be like, Bob Roop at webster.edu, but the only thing is Bob Roop. This website, several of them you can go to get the links, so you can write people directly. Now,
Okay. Go ahead.
now these are the top skills that hiring managers are looking for. a really good source of information is go online to Indeed/career guide, and they have the most up-to-date information that I've seen, and they have reasons for it. So these skills, now, if human resources in corporate America is moving towards top skills in a job, these are the skills you have to demonstrate. So active listening. So when you're telling someone, when someone tell me about yourself, you want to say, you know, I really love this new software package. Okay. Just demonstrate you have computer skills. Show some excitement to show you have good interpersonal skills. And time management. When I failed when I missed a deadline. What I learned from that deadline was better time management skills. And when I say, you know, when I say, would you please ask that question again? And then you say, oh, in a similar vein, I did. You're showing transferable skills. You never said I'd never done that. In a similar vein. And so what you're trying to show is your transferable skills. Leadership. People are going to say, I've never been a leader. I don't know anything about leading. Well, the definition of leadership is your ability to influence. So demonstrate, you know, how have you influenced? And what a lot of people don't do is they forget to talk about their volunteer experience. Because sometimes your volunteer experience is very significant. And when Ann was introducing me, she said I was vice chairman of the board of the Mid-Atlantic Federal Credit Union. It's almost a $500 million credit union. So it's a big financial responsibility. And on the board, we have big responsibility and we have huge insurance, you know, if things go wrong. So I put that out there because most HR people are not very skilled in financial services. So if someone were to say to me, tell me about a budget, you know, what was your biggest budget? I would say, well, at the credit union where I'm vice chairman of the board, it's a $500 million. And that's bigger than most companies you're going to be interviewing for. So don't forget your volunteer experience. So leadership is the ability to influence. So how have you influenced people? And I would say, and tell me about yourself, I love being on a team because I've been able to turn situations around. And you're trying to create a sticky memory. So you want them to say, they've turned situations around. You know, so now you've put out there that, gee, he might be a turnaround executive. Or this department's not really working that well. They would be perfect. Active listening. What do you think that means? Active listening it does still, but people used to say, I thought I heard you say, and you feed back what you heard. And so that shows your active listening, and it all shows what? Your ability to communicate back. I heard, I listened, I processed, and I gave you feedback. Management skills. So, you know, how many, the previous presenter was talking about project managers. So what I want you to do as part of your homework is I want you to copy these 10 skills, and then under each skill, write what you have done in active listening. What have you done in computer skills? What have you done in customer service skills? So as you get all of these skills and you get the job description, now you have the job descriptions, what you've done, and what skill area they're in. And so now you have really very, very powerful interviewing preparation. And the more prep work, the better you can do.
That's great. Bob, we have several questions. Is now a good time to take some?
Sure, fire away.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to try and do sort of like speed responses. It's 11:45. And so we have 5 more minutes for your presentation. And then Bob's going to jump into chat and I'll tell him where we left off and he'll respond directly to that person. If you're offered the option to have your resume scanned by an AI, the company has asked you, would you say yes or no?
I would say yes, because if you say no, your candidacy ended.
Okay. Let's see. Do you think using the applicant tracking system, do you believe qualified people are missed?
Say that again, Ann?
Do you think that when companies use applicant tracking systems, they're missing qualified people? Pros
Yes,
and cons? Okay.
yes.
How do you do? How do you,
And let me interrupt you.
sure.
Yes, pardon me, please. Yes, they're missing qualified people, and that's why I say try to get to the hiring manager. So it's nothing wrong with calling the company and say, "Hey, what's the name of the director of accounting?"
Mm,
And
true.
send the resume directly to the accounting manager.
Brilliant. How do you determine if you should apply for a job or not? How important is the number of years of experience? Example, the position asks for 3 years, I only have one. What about the specs? Are they put in order of importance? So I guess somebody's just trying to, we have a lot of people who are changing careers as well.
When you're changing careers, what you want to say, and if they say 3 years and you only have one, you want to talk. You remember what I've said. We're now approaching skill-based hiring. So you want to redo your resume and put the skills that you have in your resume. So if you and there's 1 year experience versus 3 years experience is only 600 days. And I think if you can demonstrate you have a lot of these top 10 skills, you'll be okay.
And as an HR person, when HR is creating these ads, are they putting the, where they say you have to have these criteria or specifications, are they in order of importance, or is it just it's a wild card?
Typically, they're not. If you may see what they say required experience or preferred. And so if they break it out, then then it's prioritized. But if they're just giving you, say, bullet points, typically they're not prioritized.
Gotcha. If you've been unemployed for a year or more, how would you adjust your resume or LinkedIn profile so this does not come across as weakness or a red flag of any kind?
People have a real anxiety about that. Now, we've had COVID, so there are a lot of career disruptors. And so you have to be able to talk about what you did during your disruption. And if the real strong approach to that would be right after you say, tell me about yourself. And when you can get it in, I would say, and you'll notice I was off for a year because, so you bring it up, you answer it, and you move on. So again, that comes with confidence. I have a gap in my resume. And I say, yeah, you'll notice that after I left Montgomery College as Chief Human Resource Officer, there's a gap of almost a year. And the reason there was a gap is my wife had eye surgery that went horribly wrong, and she lost her vision in one eye. And so she couldn't drive, she couldn't triangulate, she had trouble walking. So I just took a year off to help her. She had repair surgery a couple of weeks ago, and she's 100% better.
That's wonderful. What did you put though on your resume?
I'm sorry?
What did you put for that 1 year on your resume?
Oh, I didn't. I see what you're saying. I may have left, and I'm making these dates up. I may have left Montgomery College and just make it easy for me, 2000. Okay. Then my next job would have been 2021. So I wouldn't necessarily say in that gap. I would just say I was here and I went here and let them figure out there's a gap. And then if they ask about it, you have your explanation, or depending on how you're feeling about the interview, bring it up. You can see I had a gap, and I had a gap because of my wife.
Mm. Okay.
And so you have to be able to explain what you did. You can't say I sat at home and I watched soap operas and I put on 30 pounds by eating chocolate all day. That's, you have to say what you did, you know, the reason and what you did.
Okay.
Volunteer work, went back to school, took courses.
Bob, we need to give you 6 hours. And I know that you're teaching classes at Montgomery College, I think it is. It's now 11:51. And we do need to give everybody a break here today because we're going to start up with our employers at noon. And we have 17 of them today, which is just wonderful and amazing. I first want to say thank you so very much for being here today. It's greatly appreciated. Very interesting, very fascinating. We have, oh goodness, probably about 18 questions for you. If you could please start at 11:37 a.m. The question is if you have been unemployed for a year, how would you adjust your resume or LinkedIn? So, oh wait, we just answered that one. Sorry, my bad. Let me go down. How do you handle the question, why did you leave your last job? And that's at 11:37 a.m. And the person's name starts with the J. So if you could respond directly to that person, that'd be great. And everybody else, if you have any questions for Bob, it's Robert Roop, R-O-O-P. And just please direct your question directly to him now while you're in chat. And
Okay,
Bob,
now I'm having trouble seeing the chat.
okay, that's fair.
Okay, now I got it. Okay, now where do you want me to start?
If you could start at 11:37 a.m. and the initials are JH. Because we don't
11,
say, yeah, because we
11?
don't say people's names when we're recording.
Yeah, okay, 11:37.
Yep.
Okay, now, so everyone else is going to leave and I'm just going to answer as many of these as I can.
If you'd be so kind, that would be wonderful. And everybody, what we can do is you can get up and take a break and stretch because we want everybody to be able to do